On this week's episode, we talk about Seth Rollins winning Money in the Bank, the new WWE World's Heavyweight Champion, AJ Lee returns, Y2J returns, and something about Twinkies on this edition of Byte That. Welcome everyone to episode 45 of Byte That, the semi-somewhat maybe international professional wrestling podcast where we talk about the ups and downs of that which we love, which is the world of professional wrestling. My name is Juan Velez. I am from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and joining me as always, all the way from Boston, Massachusetts, Mr. Money in the Bank himself, except he didn't really win a match. We got Ryan McNulty.
Juan, what is going on? We are coming off a really hot week in wrestling, or 2 days, I should say, and I think we got no time to waste, so let's just jump right into it.
Absolutely, sir. We do want to thank each and every one of you for listening in, for tuning in, and invite you to check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ByteThatCast, where we have the Raw reception, which, I mean, judging by this episode, a lot of things happened on Raw. A lot of things happened at Money in the Bank. Remember, the podcast is available every single Wednesday on iTunes and Stitcher, Thursdays on YouTube, and for everything else in social media, including Twitter and Facebook, there's Byte That Cast. So we have a pretty packed show tonight. So what we're going to be doing is we'll first cover Money in the Bank because obviously that's what led up to, the things that happened on Raw. So first things, I want to take it to you immediately, sir, because you were actually at the pay-per-view. See, I was at home watching it by myself. The network froze a couple of times, but you, my friend, you had a couple of thousand people by your side. How was that experience?
It was honestly a great show. Definitely one of the best shows I've ever been to. I did my small review on the YouTube channel if you guys want to check that out. But one of the things I mentioned was that this was a new experience to see these ladder matches live, and hell of ladder matches we saw. So the live experience was great. Bray Wyatt's entrance was a cool experience live. There was a lot going on. It was a great show. One particular thing I'll jump into before we get into the matches themselves was something that I saw live that maybe only a few other people saw because it wasn't on TV. But during that main event ladder match, you might have seen that one of the Spanish announcers got in the way of Randy Orton and Sheamus when they were doing, Sheamus might have got thrown into the barricade over by the Spanish announce table. Anyway, as he got hit, Sheamus ran into that guy. He just sort of ran back to try and go into his position. He didn't sell, like he just got 250 plus guy thrown into him. As he's getting ready to put his headset back on and resume commentating, Triple H, knowing he's off camera, gets up, scurries past JBL, Lawler, Cole, directly to that guy, grabs him, rips him across the Spanish announce table, smacks the headset off, and yanks him down to the ground, basically saying, like, you sell that, you stay down.
Wow.
So, because, did it get on camera, him getting run into?
It was slightly shown, but I mean, that part
because
afterwards.
Anyone,
like, if you didn't tell me, I would not have noticed.
Because maybe the people who were watching it, in Spanish, if that guy just comes back on commentary right away, you're really killing kayfabe there. That just shows the veteran skills that he has and the intuition. He's trying to keep the ship running even while he's out being a character. So maybe some people don't agree with his move, but I think he's just trying to protect the integrity of his show. And maybe it was a little intense, but you gotta do what you gotta do. And that's how you get into, an authority role such as that.
Yeah. No, and that's, I guess, the cool thing of watching live events. You really get to see all that stuff. You get to see, I remember when people talked about the Shield, it was sort of spoiled when you were alive because you would see the security guards, you would see everybody just going into position, ready to, open the doors for the Shield and all that. So just seeing those little things is certainly unique. So now that we actually get to the pay-per-view itself, we won't have time to cover each and every match because of all the things that happened on Raw, but there are three things in particular. The first thing is actually the tag team match that opened the show. We had the Usos taking on the Wyatt family of Eric Rowan and Luke Harper. Personally, I thought that this match blew expectations away. You know, these are two tremendous tag teams, and I think that was a much better match than most people intended it to be.
Absolutely, and I think the theme of the night was outside dives, and this match had it in spades. And this was just a really great opening match. Like you said, completely exceeded expectations. You know, the Usos, they may not be the most exciting characters, but in ring, these guys can go, and they almost never, I can't remember a bad match that they have. And, you know, the Wyatt family is excellent too. The theme, the Wyatt family's theme though, was being live there, it was inaudible. It was like complete dissonance. It was all screeching. I guess it came off a lot better on TV, but from where I was sitting, it just sounded like the worst, you know, the worst sound ever from like Dumb and Dumber or whatever. Just like all that screeching and...
No, it was a weird mix. It was pretty cool. I mean, we could clearly hear it, at least on TV. That's also the interesting thing about, you know, the live experience. And sometimes, you know, maybe you won't hear a promo quite as well as you would TV. Same thing with the theme music, but I thought that they are doing a very good job, especially with this match, showing that, you know, they're the Wyatt family, but let's not forget that they're also Eric Rowan and Luke Harper. You know, like they're not actually Wyatts. They belong to this huge entity known as Bray Wyatt, who is their god, but they can also play, you know, just fine by themselves. And one thing I will give the match a little bit of flack on, just because I got to complain about something here, is that lay down a little bit on the super kicks, just a little bit, like, because I love super kicks a lot. But if there's one thing that I'm not a huge fan of, for example, of the Young Bucks and the independent scene, is like when you do it too much, it becomes like a snapmare. It becomes like a regular suplex for me. And just lay low a little bit, at least for me as a fan. That being said, they're awesome, though.
I agree. I did notice that, too. That the Usos do a lot of super kicks, just a lot of kicks to the midsection and stuff. And yes, the Wyatt family, of course, have their kicks as well. You know, mainly Rowan's big boots. So there was a lot of kicks in this match. But I do notice that the Usos do those kicks to the midsection a lot, and they do look great, but like you said, you gotta you don't want to water it down.
Yeah, you want to definitely build up moves. At least for me, that's one of the things that I do like about, you know, how, for example, the Wyatt family, how they've been built up slowly over time. They become better wrestlers almost. You know, at first they were just the silent guys. Now that you would think that they can just talk fine by themselves. So it kind of sucks that they didn't win, although we agreed that they were actually going to win the championships, although maybe it would have been a little too early. I'm just worried about where Eric Rowan and Luke Harper are going to go, because obviously, as we found out on Raw, there's some pretty cool things that we'll be talking about, but that's for Bray Wyatt. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens for the tag team within the Wyatt family. Now, we absolutely need to get to the two big matches of the night of Money in the Bank. We had first a briefcase match where the winner would become the traditional Money in the Bank winner. Then we got the championship match, which included a ton of superstars. Getting to the first one, and because it was your first time witnessing a ladder match live, do you think you enjoyed it more, less, you know, give or take? Was it the same? How was that live experience as opposed to watching a TLC or something like that on your couch?
I think the live experience works well for a ladder match because it is so over the top, and because they're so high up, you can visibly see mostly everything. It's not, you know, there's some matches you see live and then you watch on TV and you realize you missed all the small nuances in the match. But these matches are just so over the top and crazy that it's hard to miss anything that goes on. So this was, you know, it's one of the best types of matches to see live, in my opinion. And it was just insane. I mean, this match was, you know, show stealer is an understatement. Seth Rollins just being an absolute maniac in this match with the bumps he was taking. I mean, let's just go into that suplex off the ladder. Have you ever seen that in the WWE ring before, besides video games?
Yeah, that was going to be my first answer. I honestly can't recall. Obviously, maybe CCW or some independent company might have done that, but I don't think that people realize how risky that move is off the ladder. You know, you're falling flat on your back, and if you don't take that bump well, just a little bit, like you can snap your neck. Plus, it's the subtle things. It wasn't just the superplex. It was the way that Dean Ambrose sort of sold it. Like the man like flipped inside out or something, and he was the one giving the move, and that to me sold it so well. It told a great story, and the fact that it was between those two guys that have this personal rivalry just made it awesome.
And it was awesome, though, that they teased that suplex a couple of times before it actually happened with different participants. Like, that is how you set up a move. You don't just give it to him right away. And also Rollins flipping over and landing on that ladder that was propped up on the ropes. That was another crazy one.
That was crazy.
The funny thing is, from my perspective, since I was basically facing the stage from the balcony, when Kofi Kingston got tipped over and he jumped off the rope onto them, I couldn't see that he actually jumped off the rope. I thought he straight up fell off the ladder onto them. It wasn't until I saw a clip later that I was like, oh, he actually jumped off the rope, which kind of made it a little bit safer on his part and made it cool because I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it was very creative, and one thing that I will certainly give this match props is that everybody got their moment. You know, you could tell, like, at the beginning, it was like, okay, so Swagger's going to be taking this bump, and so at one point he's going to be doing, you know, his corner body splash. Dolph Ziggler stole the show at one point. You know, just he took everybody out, you know, with super kicks, whatever it was, zigzag on the ladder. It was crazy spots, and at the same time, it showed, you know, like these guys, and maybe they don't have the top storyline. They don't have like the primary focus that some of us will like, and especially with a guy like Ziggler. You know, when you give them the spotlight, they more than take it. They grab it. And like you mentioned, you know, we're going to be talking about the other match in a little bit, but without a doubt, this was the match of the show.
These are the guys that are hungry. The other match is definitely a different style for different reasons, and we'll get into that. But these are the guys who have something to prove. So, and plus, I think the high-flying style was lended more to the wrestlers in this match than in the main event. So that's why we were seeing just, you know, a very spot-heavy match, and it was just excellent.
Before we get to the actual winner of the match, who would you say was your favorite in the match? Not the person that won, but just the person that always kept your interest.
I think the MVP of this match is Seth Rollins, who also happened to be the winner, just because I feel he put himself on the line. He's the guy who puts himself on the line every pay-per-view, if you think about it. I mean, this guy is insane. It's no wonder Triple H sees something in him. And yeah, he gets my MVP. Even if he wasn't the one doing the moves, technically, just the fact that he's taking these insane moves gets my respect.
Yeah, I'll have to pretty much agree 100%, because a lot of times we'll credit the guy delivering the move. But if the other person doesn't make it look great, guess what? We forget about that. You know, when he got backflipped onto the other ladder that was wedged in between, it was the fact that, like, you could tell he was definitely going for that bounce. And then he, like, fell down, like, he hit his head, you know, with the ladder at the end. Like, he put his body on the line. Obviously, that's a risk. You know, he became the winner of the match, which means they have to have a lot of things lying for him in the future. So definitely be a little bit careful. You know, they may have to be a little bit more picky about where they go with Seth Rollins from here on out.
But how did you feel about the finish of the match?
See, this is the part where I tried to overanalyze things just to see what I could bring it. If there was a part where I could just enjoy it as a fan or hate it as a fan, it would be this. Because, you know, I was pissed first, but then I became self-aware, like, oh, they're doing this because they want us to not like Rollins. So that's why they brought out Kane. But then me being aware of that sort of made me lose that magic of, like, Dean Ambrose should not win that. You know, it's way more fun if he gets upset at Seth Rollins than if he just won it, because then, like, where's the obstacle? You know, there is none. So how did you feel about that?
I think a very similar reaction. Of course, you're pissed because I really wanted Dean Ambrose to win. When we did our predictions, you know, of course, Barrett ended up not being in the match, and these were the other two guys who we felt were the favorites. And obviously, we want to, you know, Seth Rollins turn on the Shield. Naturally, we're rooting for Dean Ambrose. So, I was mad, but exactly like you said, the direction they're going, it's only better for both of them that it went this way.
Absolutely, and there's just so much meat. You know, like, this is just getting started. and it's off hot. It wasn't just a Money in the Bank ladder match. It felt like this really told a story. There was a controversial ending, and it's going to keep going.
And one last thing I want to comment on this match. This is a slight... It may seem like such a small thing, but to me this meant the world. Was that as soon as Dean Ambrose got in the ring, he just immediately attacked Seth Rollins, basically out for blood. And it's like, how long has it been since you've really felt that two guys really hated each other that much? And the fact that he did that was just sold that feud so much more and made it feel so much more important, so much more intense. It's, that's a thing like Stone Cold Steve Austin would have done. And that is why I think, it made all the difference.
Yeah, the awesome thing about wrestling at the end of the day, you make something personal. That's all you really need to do. Like, a lot of times we'll think, oh, what if this happens? You know what? Just have this guy be pissed off at the other guy and kick his ass. Don't overthink it. And the crowd got behind it. It was not a ladder spot, and people were selling it.
Don't just make it personal. Make it feel personal. And I think that's where they went, and that's why it's working.
I mean, Seth Rollins, we'll have to wait and see what happens, as we'll get to the Raw section. They keep consistently teasing what's going to happen, and I think we're in for a fun ride. But of course, the Money in the Bank briefcase winner needs to challenge the champion, which we had none, but now we do. So at the conclusion of the WWE World Heavyweight Championship ladder match, we now have a 15-time World's Champion or WWE Champion, whatever you want to specify him as, in John Cena. Now, we pretty much knew this was going to happen. We talked about this last week, but what was it like really seeing it, and in your case, witnessing it live?
It's a weird feeling. It was just sort of like, okay, that's where they're going with it. All right, time to leave. It was a very lukewarm feeling. There was no excitement to it because it's what I expected. And if you really look at it, they pretty much had no other option. Because Randy Orton just had the belt, and he is literally their only other option unless they want to either hurt the title or hurt a guy's momentum. It's too early to put it on Reigns. Bray Wyatt would be cool, but it's also way too early for him. So it's Orton or Cena, and at this point, I would rather have Cena just because we just came off of a long reign from Orton. So it's expected, and it's a lukewarm feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think lukewarm pretty much tells the whole story. During the whole match, I was trying to get that itch, like during, not that other itch, this one. During the briefcase match, I was like, oh, maybe Ambrose is going to win. But in this one, whenever anybody got near, I was like, all right, cool. So, the other guy's going to interfere or something. I didn't get that adrenaline rush of, oh, he may possibly win. Where's the gravity factor or something? So, when Cena won, I was like, okay, so, great. We have a champion now, which we didn't.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about that match, was there really a time where you felt like anyone could win? Because, I mean, if you look at the other match, there were times where it definitely felt like Ambrose was going to win. It even felt like Kofi was going to win at one point. Whereas this match, I felt like there was no time where I was like, oh my god, maybe Randy Orton. There was a time where Randy Orton was close. He was about the only one that you might have gotten that feeling, but you just felt that because Kane was there doing the same thing, lightning never strikes twice in the WWE, so you knew something would happen this time.
And I think one of the things you brought up in the previous match plays a big factor in this, which is the hunger. In the other match, everybody you could tell was like, okay, so we need to make sure that people prefer us over them. And because they got the first opportunity at having one of two ladder matches in the pay-per-view, by the time we get to the championship one, everybody's lukewarm because they want to see Daniel Bryan being the champion. They know Cesaro is not going to win because, if anything, he was going to win the briefcase. So many factors played into this that there wasn't a lot of investment into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely give credit to Randy Orton. I felt like he put in an extra effort in this match, and also a great RKO in there, and the guy was busted open and still, worked this match like a champ.
That was crazy.
But this match I feel like it had some lull points in it, and the crowd kind of got a little quiet, where there was one point there was literally nobody in the ring. Cesaro was sort of on the apron trying to get a ladder in, but there was nothing going on in the middle of the ring, and the crowd just kind of felt lost for a moment. Whereas I felt like the previous ladder match was kind of nonstop. And I think maybe what they could have done was, I was expecting tables, honestly. I thought that in the first match they didn't have any tables because they wanted something for the main event to have.
Yeah, saving it.
But, I mean, they didn't really do anything with tables either. I mean, you don't always need a table spot, but I felt that would have really kind of pushed this match over the top. There was that creative moment where the ladder was stuck inside the other ladder and they tipped it over and it kind of leaned again.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like that was a cool idea and they should have done something with that, but it was just kind of like Cesaro was hanging there and then they moved it back. There was some potential for a cool moment and, you know, I don't know, I felt like that needed just a little something else going on.
Yeah, I guess to conclude it felt like they couldn't top the first match, so they didn't. You know, like, the tables would have at least made it different. Maybe we would have enjoyed the first match more still, but at least we could have gone, okay, at least they did something different. Maybe not better, but at least, you know, they tried to be a little bit more creative in that sense.
In just another moment similar to the one I was talking about before, there was another point where Cesaro and Sheamus were both hanging onto the belts, and then, you know, Sheamus dropped down and Cesaro was just hanging there, and then he just eventually fell down. That was another thing where they could have done something there. You know, even if it was just a guy who, you know, grabbed his legs and powerbombed him down or something, you know, like it felt like they had these setups and then there wasn't a delivery.
Yeah, the last thing I do want to bring up is something you actually mentioned, which is Randy's injury. I don't know if you saw the tweet Randy posted after the show, but the man was, like, his head was just split open.
How did that happen, by the way? I actually...
a ladder fell on his head, but it didn't just, like, fall flat. It, like, scraped his head. And, I mean, the man is basically bald, so there's nothing, there's nothing
no hair
to
protect him, really, yeah.
Exactly. So you look at it, and there was just this huge gash. And he tweeted a picture before and after he got the stitches. And man, so maybe you even got to think, you know, they were being a little bit more careful in that match because that happened not too far into it. You know, we forget that maybe we as fans don't really see a lot of action, you know, but when even just a simple Irish whip hurts, imagine just, you know, falling off the ladder and the risks involved. You know, you got to give these men props. So overall, would you say that Money in the Bank was a pretty good pay-per-view?
Yes, definitely. One of the better pay-per-views of the year, without a doubt.
Yeah, same thing. I enjoyed it too. I think that there wasn't necessarily a lot of storyline development aside from the Seth Rollins winning the briefcase. Everything else you sort of knew was going to happen. But at the same time, I didn't really mind it because the night after. Wow. Now, this is where we can, if you had like a bingo machine or something, you just pulled out, okay, so apparently this guy's coming back. Oh, this other person's coming back. It was just an outstanding Raw. It almost seemed like a post-WrestleMania Raw, did it not?
It definitely, I got that vibe. I think it's safe to say that this was the best Raw since then. And maybe even better. I don't quite remember too many things happening on what happened on Post-Mania Raw. Let's see if we can rack our brains.
You're talking to somebody with a very, very short attention span, sir.
The only thing I can remember, you know, was something I want to talk about later, but it had to do with the Divas Championship.
Which we'll be getting to, but first, sir, before Raw actually began, we got all these things which I spoke in the reception available on our YouTube channel, that there was a former WWE champion that was going to be coming back. The rumors actually were that it was going to be Jericho. But, of course, cue the music, Miz came out. So, you know, we were talking about the fact that, oh, now it's disappointing, like, really, Miz and all this. All of a sudden, boom, Pyro, Jericho comes out. Then it's like, Jericho Miz feud? I don't know, man. I'm not feeling it too much. Lights go out, boom, Wyatt family. It's like, what is going on here, man? It's crazy.
I mean, I would have been perfectly okay with Miz versus Jericho, just because I'd be happy that Jericho's back. The fact that they sort of tease that to make you think, oh, this is the direction they're going, and then cue in the Wyatts, and then it's just like, oh, man. Now it's on. Now this is something we want to see. And you mentioned in the reception something I totally forgot about, is that they did face each other in NXT A couple months, about a year ago, maybe.
Yeah, just when NXT was getting, once they went to Full Sail and they started getting these superstars, after Jericho, we got guys like Cesaro and Sheamus going in, but Jericho was one of the first guys that went down to NXT, and even he was talking about this in his podcast, that he was the one that picked to face Bray Wyatt in NXT, so this is somebody that he's been wanting to deal with for a while, and one thing that I do want to point out, as I know you're also a big fan of his podcast, Talk is Jericho, is that he says whenever he comes back, he doesn't want to do the same thing. So that's why I was worried when The Miz was out there, because I was like, this type of feud has happened before, with The Rock and all that. Cocky guy meets, star guy. So all of a sudden, you get, the unorthodox Bray Wyatt, and then you're like, oh, okay, so Jericho can just take so many directions. He can take a little bit of his heel persona when he feuded with Shawn Michaels. He can take a little bit of his previous persona, Y2J, just all of the best things from him, and just take that out on Bray Wyatt.
Absolutely. I mean, what we saw, you can go and watch that match, that him versus, Jericho versus Bray Wyatt in NXT, and, that's just a one-off match. Where they're going now is exciting because you can just imagine, like you said, he wants to do something different. I think, we're going to get some awesome promo work. I think they're going to craft some interesting storyline around this. Jericho isn't coming back, for nothing, and what does that say for Bray Wyatt? I mean, what a compliment for a guy basically coming back just to feud with you. I mean, that is, that's gonna be one of the biggest one of the biggest compliments you can get as a worker.
Absolutely, and the fact that Jericho was bringing up the fact that he was upset he wasn't at Mania, but it's because nothing gave him that satisfaction of wanting to do this. So my biggest concern, Jericho's a busy guy. Like right now he's promoting his brand new album, which he continuously promotes in his podcast. He has a podcast that has 2 episodes a week. Countless other stuff. He has like a TV show or something that I keep forgetting he does.
A web series, I think.
Yeah, a web series. So my concern as a fan is, as much as I want to just enjoy the storyline, part of me is like, is it going to be another thing where it's like 2-month program, done? Or is it going to be a thing that really just keeps building over and they add different layers, as they did with like Jericho Punk? I think that was a very underrated feud between Jericho and Punk, and I think that this has potential to be way better because, unlike Punk, Bray Wyatt, we're still getting to know. That you can pull so many things from his quote-unquote past that we may not know about, Sister Abigail, so many things that the options are endless. But then I ask you, how do you think this is going to be a long-term program, or is it going to be another Jericho temporary appearance?
It's got to at least go to SummerSlam. I don't know if they're going to do anything at Battleground. I'd hope so, because I would like this to be at least a 3-match series. I mean, maybe we only get 2, but I'll take what I can get. But it's got to be more than a 1-month program. If it is, that is a huge disappointment. But I don't think Jericho would come back just for a one-off type of situation. I think he wants to do some sort of long-term program. I haven't read any reports that say how long he's going to be around, but you gotta think at the very, very, very least, it's till SummerSlam. Let's hope it goes a little bit further than that, because I think there is plenty of potential.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
So where does this leave Miz?
I don't know.
It seems so weird because after that, like I love the fact that we were like blindsided, but at the same time, it's like you're pretty much just killing off Miz, and the guy was already pretty irrelevant. Like people really didn't.
I feel bad because I actually liked his promo on Raw this week. I thought it was really good, and I thought he was in for something important, and then he's code breakered out of the ring. But one thing I want to say though is, a couple weeks ago we talked about, what's next for Bray Wyatt after John Cena. Well, I think we got a pretty good answer.
Well, based on this segment though, do you think there's space for a temporary third man in The Miz? Obviously, I don't think that he'll just be like, okay, so you two go at it, I'm just going to be here. Maybe a Battleground so we can get like a triple threat, and that would extend the program. for SummerSlam or post SummerSlam.
It's not a bad idea, but I feel like it really waters down the feud. And nothing against The Miz, I just think a third man in it, because this is something, Jericho versus Wyatt. This is like it's a headliner type of, you know what I mean? It's a ticket selling match. So if they add a third guy, I feel like it kind of dilutes that. And when we see Jericho versus Wyatt, I feel like we want that to be a one-on-one confrontation the first time we see it. And if we get the triple threat first and then the singles match isn't going to be as important.
That is very true. So I can't wait for next week's Raw. I don't know we record on a Tuesday, so who knows? Maybe something's happening on SmackDown, but usually that transitions over to Raw, as has been the case a lot of times. So I am really pumped just to seeing what kind of character Jericho is actually going to be playing, because we didn't really get to hear much from Jericho aside from the traditional Jericho thing. So where is he going to meet Bray Wyatt? I'm really looking forward to that. So Ryan, I think that we've been talking a lot about wrestling, but we need to talk about us as a podcast. Can we do that for a second?
Sure. Let's do it.
After the past couple of weeks, would you consider that we are officially safe from bear attacks?
I think so. I think we've spread awareness, and I feel that we have successfully thwarted bears from our podcast. So I think it is time for us as a show to move on.
Absolutely, sir, because I feel very confident that when Keith, the third co-host of the show, comes back, he won't have to look to his sides, he won't have to look behind him or even in front of him, because he is going to be safe from the bear attacks. I even lost the English language there for a second. So I think that with that being said, we need to spike things up a bit. You know what? What time is it? Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the pick of the week. That is right, ladies and gentlemen. We have a brand new segment called The Pick of the Week. It won't be happening every single week, but when it does, you're going to be like, oh, these guys are going to bring up something awesome. And speaking of awesome, we got The Miz, who got code-breakered by who? Chris Jericho, who happens to do what? A podcast. Available where? Podcast One. We do a podcast. I listen to a podcast, and that podcast is so good that I got to bring it up in our podcast. That is because in episode 50 of Talk is Jericho, Jericho had a special guest co-host in Edge, and the guest was Paul Heyman. How awesome was that podcast episode, Ryan?
It was excellent. You get to hear plenty of things. I mean, we know that Paul Heyman is always an excellent interviewee. He's got so many stories from ECW, WWE, WCW, you name it. Studio 54. He talks about his experiences at Studio 54. You get to hear his feelings on the streak ending, his feelings on Brock Lesnar. You get to learn a few things about how Brock Lesnar lives and how far away from civilization he lives. So there is plenty to listen to. This, if you are into just learning about some of the backstage things in wrestling, or just a closer look into the lives of either Edge, Paul Heyman, or Brock Lesnar, and even some CM Punk information and how he was feeling towards the last year of his run. So there is just so much to hear in this interview, and it's what is it, almost 3 hours long?
Yeah, it's like 3 hours. It's 2 full episodes, so you get to hear about all this stuff, and we're getting a Paul Heyman DVD coming out in the very near future, so this is an awesome way for us to get ready for it. If you do want to listen to the podcast episode, you can check out podcastone.com and search Talk is Jericho. My recommendation, if you have an Android phone, I'm not sure if this is out for Android, for iPhone, download the Podcast Addict app and search Talk is Jericho. It is awesome. You're going to love it. And send us a tweet at ByteThatCast if you enjoyed the episodes. So that has been it for the very first iteration of the Pick of the Week. By the way, that Podcast Addict app, you know where you can also download there? You can download Byte That. Just search Byte That using the iTunes search function. We do want to provide you with a quick update about our YouTube channel. We have the Raw Reception. Remember, the podcast goes up on that channel every single Thursday. We are just 5 episodes away from episode 50, Ryan.
We are.
We've been doing this thing. We're almost a year in. Our website has to be renewed in like 7 days. I should probably get around to that before it expires. And because of that, we will be re-envisioning our website, bytethat.com, Byte with a Y, because we want to expand with a lot more stuff. We have something that's very special, which we will unveil at episode 50. What's it going to be? If you look at our YouTube channel, there's a couple of clues that can give you an idea of what we love and what we know you will love it. So is there anything else you would like to let us know, Ryan?
Yes, for by episode 50, so around 1 year for Byte That, exclusively on YouTube, we will be doing our top 5 favorite podcast moments in 1 year of Byte That. So we're gonna just count down some of the moments that we thought were either we had a good discussion. Most of it though is going to be just the fun times that we've had on the podcast, because this show's been a lot of fun. We've done this every single week for almost a year now, and it doesn't feel like work or anything like that. We enjoy it. So we want to share with you the moments that we enjoyed the most, and hopefully you guys will like that too. And maybe you'll hear some clips from earlier episodes that you either missed, or maybe you skipped an episode here or there, and so you might be able to catch some of those entertaining moments that you didn't get to hear. And of course, maybe some of your favorite moments will be on that list as well.
Yeah, and for those that are new to the show, first of all, we love you. Welcome to the family. And this is also a good way to introduce maybe your friends. If you like the podcast, you can support us by simply sharing that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe on iTunes, and let us know just what you would like us to do within the next year. In episode 50, we'll be getting to a lot more of that, but wow, 5 away from 50, that is crazy, sir. You know what else is crazy? Just when I thought, okay, Raw's done. We have a main event. We have a tag team match. Nothing else can happen. Paige comes out, starts talking about the fact that, she doesn't need to go back down to NXT. She was sounding very egotistical. I think that she was starting to believe her own hype. And what happens? Naomi doesn't come out. We get AJ Lee, who, according to you, Ryan, you reported that she was pregnant,
Yep.
sir, but clearly she was not, so you lying, man. This guy's a big phony. What happened here? What happened?
I was wrong. I already edited that weekly filler episode admitting that I was wrong. The source I had was pretty reliable, but you know what? It goes to show that if it comes from a Reddit user, you probably shouldn't take it as fact. But you know what? This is the world of wrestling, and everyone knows wrestling news is always to be taken with a grain of salt. Maybe I went a little too far calling this report rock solid, but you know what? This is good news. I'm afraid I've got some good news, and that's AJ's career isn't over. And she's Divas champion, for Christ's sake. So I think this is it's good to be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong here.
So that means you still have a chance. No, you don't. So, AJ's back. I don't think a single person ever expected this to happen. With the whole CM Punk situation, you were at Boston, and all of a sudden you got some weird accent again, where people were consistently chanting CM Punk. They were doing the same thing on Raw. So what better way to shut up the people than by having CM Punk's wife return to professional wrestling? So obviously the CM Punk chant started breaking out. Paige at one moment had a really awkward pause because you could tell she was distracted by the chants. The people were aware of that, and they proceeded to chant louder. What is your reaction to this crazy thing of we almost got a double turn, and we got a Divas champion out of it?
I pretty much would call this a double turn. It's kind of funny because Paige's title reign was essentially a rental while AJ was on vacation. That's the best way to put it. But I think this works for the feud, and I like that they took the title off Paige because people still really don't know her too well, and it's better if she's chasing it. And this was essentially a double turn. You always get that welcome back pop when you come back, but it's like, AJ's gonna get cheered over Paige. Paige is just too new, crowd doesn't know her enough yet. So this is the best move, and plus, I think Paige could work better as a heel and maybe implement that anti-diva.
In NXT, people were growing to like Paige, and in WWE it was like, okay, so we can just take that established character and put her on screen and just assume that we don't really have to do all that much more. Clearly they have to, because people just were not caring. You know, she had a pretty good match with Naomi in the pay-per-view. There were a couple of spots that looked a little odd, but overall it was an excellent Divas match, but people weren't really reacting to it. You know, Naomi was practically killing herself in Money in the Bank, you know, to get the crowd's reaction with those crazy dives and all that. So I think that this is a nice change.
I think the crowd was actually a little more into it than it might have seemed live. It had its quiet spots, but for any move, the crowd popped for pretty much any high spot there was in that match. But I think what they did with Paige was pretty good in the way that they actually did establish her as a great female wrestler. Even if people don't buy into her character yet, she is still, her ability is respected, so it actually puts her on a good level with AJ in this feud. It doesn't seem like AJ is towering above her in skill in the ring and everything. It's a believable feud that can work.
Exactly, and I think that you hit the nail on the head there, which is, I know that Paige can go at it. Whenever she goes through the Scorpion Crosslock, people pop. Like, just, you know, how often do you see people react before the submission move is even applied, or let alone a submission move, which people don't really, you know, pop that much for nowadays. So we get that, but now we can get the missing piece of the puzzle, which is the character. Because during that match, you know, she was like slapping AJ in the face and all that. And I was like, yes, man, we need that. Obviously, the question is she going to be just the anti-diva? Is she going to be the anti-diva to AJ? I don't know if you get the difference, but, like, is she just going to be the opposite, so hateable, and AJ is going to be lovable now? That's going to be a very fun thing to watch, but we could potentially be witnessing, and I know I'm getting over my head right now, a brand new Lita Trish type thing going on.
I've been hearing that a lot since last night. And it's very possible. I think it's pretty safe to say that AJ, let's throw her in the Lita role. I mean, she's with CM Punk, so that makes sense. So she's the Lita, and they just need to find the Trish. So who is that going to be? I hope it's Paige, but I think it's safe to say that AJ has, you know, etched herself as, you know, the premier diva. So who's going to step up and be her rival?
And not just that, but now that you have this opportunity to solidify divas that not just for the wrestling, but for the character, you know, you're going to start caring about more, especially if WWE gives them time. You need the backup divas because how many matches can you have? You know, even when it was Trish and Lita, you still had Jacqueline, you still had Ivory. You had a very large pool of talent, you know, even non-wrestling talent like Stacy Keibler. But when Stacy would come out, people were like, yes, you know, like, I am interested in her, much like you are with Lana. So maybe when they do that, I think that's when we're really just going to be seeing the next step in the Divas division.
That's a valid comparison, by the way. Even if Lana is heel, but I feel like it's a very similar interest.
Absolutely. And speaking of Lana, we saw something very interesting on Raw, which is unexpected. I have watched Jack Swagger since his very first match in ECW, WWE's ECW, before anybody kills me. And he had this smiling gimmick where he would just put the smirk and point to his face. That was it. That was his character. And he had Jamie Noble's theme. You know, that's how the man started out. And ever since then, I don't recall a moment where he was a good guy. He's been a bad guy ever since, when he won Money in the Bank, which nobody remembers, and all that. And I think that inevitably we were coming up to this point, which is you got Rusev, you know, America's terrible, and, you know, they hit people in the America, they punch people in the heart, and Seth Coulter just came out like, you know what, we're going to take you down, man, you're going down. And now we have Jack Swagger and Rusev starting a feud. How crazy was that crowd reaction? Jack Swagger didn't say one word. Almost nothing was said. If you really analyze that segment, not a lot was said. But it didn't need to be.
No, I mean, it was established and it was right there. And if they want this feud to go well, Jack Swagger shouldn't say anything at all. Just let Zeb talk and it's golden. Because, I mean, I think people saw that this was a natural fit. Even though Swagger has been heel, when you have this, this Cold War feud going on, basically, I mean, there's things going on in the world where people are upset with Russia right now, so, wrestling reflects society, the times.
Of course.
So it makes sense to have this Russian gimmick going on with Rusev. So naturally, who's going to feud with him? Someone called the Real American, right? So this was just this thing that was waiting to happen, and the crowd went nuts for it, and I think it's perfect. And this is the best opportunity Jack Swagger has of getting over as a face. And it's weird that Zeb is going to be a face manager, but he walked that line really well. He didn't get all goody-goody. He was still kind of true to his character, just not jumping into too much of the heel stuff. So I think this is really well done. I'm actually excited for a Jack Swagger feud.
Same.
I'm excited for a Jack Swagger feud. It's happening.
No, but the thing that I loved most about this is that Rusev and Swagger are the machines. They're like the Terminators. And the people that built the Terminators are called Lana and Zeb Coulter. Like if you noticed, they almost took back Swagger's character. They changed him. Because when he was the Real American and the Patriots or whatever the hell, he was still himself. But in this promo, he was dead serious. He didn't say a word, almost no facial expressions, almost very much like Rusev. So it's almost like they're just the wrestling portion of it.
Yeah, it's awesome that we have two managers in this feud as well. But something I just kind of realized, and I don't know how long they've been doing this, but Swagger's Titantron and stuff, it went back to the red, white, and blue, didn't it? Did it go? Because before you had the yellow, don't tread on me stuff going on for a little while. So it made sense that they sort of go back to the red, white, and blue. And yeah, this is going to be awesome. I mean, they've built up Rusev enough, and seems like it's the perfect clash.
This is the WWE. So I cannot continue onto the next segment without asking this. Zeb Coulter, is he going to fall in love with Lana? I'm not wrong about this. It's a possibility. But will it happen?
I don't think so. I don't see Zeb Coulter ever in a romantic role on screen ever. Because who wants to see that?
I do, man. Old man's got to get some, man. I mean, he's a human being.
Maybe he's going to be like the perverted old man and Lana's just going to shoo him away. Speaking of which, just a quick note. I'm going to go off topic. Did you see the whole thing with Jerry Lawler and Paige?
Yes.
I think it was last week she was doing commentary and you saw Jerry Lawler sneak a peek at that ass. Well, if you look at Paige's Twitter, she got revenge. So justice served.
Could you please never say that ass like that ever again?
Am I too white bread for you? I'm acting like Stephanie McMahon dancing to John Cena's theme.
Nice job bringing it back, sir. Props to you. No, it was a very fun Raw. That's what I liked. Even though there may not have been a lot of wrestling, which there was. There was wrestling on Raw. The most important focus was the next face, and the next faces at the same time. So I think that is awesome, which brings us to our final topic for this show, possibly the most talked about one. So Seth Rollins won the Money in the Bank, which means that Dean Ambrose didn't. But as Dean Ambrose revealed shortly thereafter, in many ways he's happy because instead of being the man with the thing, he can mess that man up. How freaking awesome is that? That we're getting a feud where it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna mess you up. You know what? You can try to win the championship if you want. I'm just going to make your life a living hell.
I love this dynamic. This is something we've never seen before. Usually someone who's gotten the briefcase is just fine to use it whenever they feel like it.
Yeah.
Now we have a guy who's gunning for the guy with the briefcase, so he's going to prevent any cash-ins. It's not like Ambrose is trying to protect John Cena. He just doesn't want Seth Rollins to become champion. So this is awesome, and it really works well with Ambrose's character that he's doing these run-ins. He's just sort of this renegade. So the more run-ins spins he gets to do, the better off he is, because the crowd just pops like crazy, and he comes off more like a madman, just like coming out of nowhere and just beating the hell out of someone.
It's like many have said, the next evolution of Dean Ambrose is Gene Ambrose, and he is awesome.
Yes, exactly.
But by the way, I got to bring this up. Did you watch the post-Raw show or the video?
Yes, that promo I did. It was an excellent promo. What was that line that I really liked? The nuclear explosions line?
The line that I want to turn into a t-shirt. Yes. The nuclear or nuclear? Are we getting into this right now?
No. 3 things will survive a nuclear explosion, and that's...
Twinkies, cockroaches, and Dean Ambrose's. I want that shirt. Please, if there is a shirt, because that already has to be a shirt. It's the internet. It happens. Please send us a tweet at ByteThatCast, and I will buy it, and I will wear it at the next cheap seat where it is I get it shipped. I love that idea so much.
And Dean Ambrose needs a t-shirt. Let me just put it that way. An official t-shirt.
And it should be that shirt. He's a crazy guy. What better shirt than a Twinkie, a cockroach, and himself? It works, man. It's amazing. And just
that would be a little cheesy, but if they had the Twinkie with the cowboy hat, like that would be, or maybe you make a Dean Ambrose Twinkie.
Dean Ambrose, how would that work?
I don't know.
We get Fruity Pebbles for John Cena and Twinkies for Dean Ambrose.
But I know a lot of women who would want that cream. I went there, and I'm sorry.
Yes, you did, sir. But at this point, because we're talking about Dean Ambrose, you know what? I will not edit that out, sir.
Perfect.
Yeah, overall, I think that the fact that we're laughing, we're having a good time with this, is seriously a good indication of where we're going. I was going to say coming, but obviously I can't say that right now. But it's the simple fact that when all of us, let's all sit here, everybody listening to the show, sit down, stop your cars, don't crash. Whenever we hate wrestling, and I'm being serious now, we have nothing good to say. We rarely laugh about it. We're like, oh, you know what? I'm thinking of taking a break. We can't enjoy it. But when it's good, you can just laugh at it. You can have fun with it. You can just say, it's like you're coming off a party and you can't wait for the next party the following Monday or on SmackDown or on NXT or something. So look at the show. We've talked about Jericho, Wyatt, AJ Lee, Swagger turning face, and we care for it. There's so many things that you just can't help but, talk about Dean Ambrose's diddly bits,
Wow. Well, let me say this. I think this show is just stacked with new things going on, and I think what people really like in wrestling is these fresh starts. You get to speculate what's going to happen, all these new things, and this show was just packed with that. And my kind of question to bring to the table is, we have these packed shows, and I fully expect next week to be status quo Raw again, because that's what almost always happens. Why don't they sort of stagger these big things and make every Raw seem a little bit more important? I know you can't have surprises every week because then you're just going to water it down. But they stack so much onto one show that next week's show is going to seem like it's going to suck. Even if it's going to be a pretty good Raw, it's going to seem like it sucks.
Exactly, because now we already know what's going to happen. It's just a matter of you're on the roller coaster. So at some point that's going to happen, and at some point the ride's going to end. Now we're just there for the ride. And I think that that's where we as wrestling... Sit back down. Let's all sit back down. We as our wrestling fans, this is what we need to do. This is how we're ending the show. Let's support the WWE in this time of transition. They have given us a babyface Jack Swagger. AJ Lee has come back. Dean Ambrose is facing Seth Rollins. Renee Young is with Dean Ambrose. Lana is on our television every single week. Let's be happy with what is happening right now. And let's just wait it out. I know it sounds hard. We're so exposed in social media. For example... Emma, was apparently arrested. Then everybody was like, oh, how could she do this? She's going to get deported or something like that. Turns out that it was actually an error.
Was it?
She was in the self-checkout at Walmart, and she bought all the other things and forgot to pay for that. She was in jail for only an hour and 20 minutes. Everything was cleared out, and she was at Raw. But we are so twitchy nowadays about things that I feel we need to bring this up. We're so twitchy about it that something happens and we just exaggerate it. I'm guilty of it. Even I posted it on our Facebook page. sucks to be Emma, you know, she's probably going to be released. Turns out it was simply a thing that maybe some of us have been guilty of, you know. Don't do the self-checkout. You may go to jail.
I don't think that would have truly affected her career too much because, I mean, as we've seen, Jack Swagger got a DUI. People get, you know, drug possession charges and all that. You may lose your title if you have one, or you may get a chance for the world title at WrestleMania. Who knows? It really...
Yes.
Because, I mean, the charge that she got was, you know...
I can't say that word.
200 and misdemeanor?
No, there was a word, not robbery or theft. There was another
larceny,
word.
Was it?
Something like that. Yeah.
Well, either way, the charge, it was a very small charge anyway, and I guess it was dropped because she didn't actually steal anything. Well, you know, that cute innocent girl, I couldn't picture her like robbing. At first, when I heard robbery, I was like, "Are you serious?" But
everybody just picture her like doing the dance, like okay, taking this, taking that,
yeah, exactly,
this.
grabbing items as she extends her arms. But either way, it's good to know that it was just one big misunderstanding, and that, you know, this has been a eye-opening week for wrestling news. That, hey, let's all calm down.
Absolutely,
like, I was completely wrong about AJ, and we were all wrong about Emma, and within like a couple hours we already got word of what actually happened. So let's settle down and enjoy the show, huh?
That is so beautiful, Ryan. The only better way to do this right now is to just keep hearing your voice as you, sir, close out the show.
Absolutely. So we want to thank you once again for listening to Byte That. We are just 5 weeks away from episode 50, and as we announced, we got plenty of cool things down the line. But of course, as always, we can't stress it enough. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ByteThatCast. We got the Raw reception every Monday now, which is just our initial reaction to each Raw, as well as what we're going to talk about on the podcast. Of course, you can catch this podcast every Wednesday on iTunes and Stitcher, and every Thursday on YouTube. Fillers on Saturdays, I cover wrestling headlines. Follow us on Twitter @ByteThatCast. That is going to do it for this week. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.